Welcome to SAM Conversation and program of South Asia Monitor. Today we are going to discuss Tibet and its future. It's very often we refer to the border that we have on the line of actual control, well over 4,000 meters, 4,000 kilometers, as the India-China border. That is not so. It is the India-Tibet border, which Tibet was gobbled by China in 1950, October. It was annexed. We have the pleasure of inviting Maj Gen Mrinal Suman, who has traveled to Tibet and who will give us very interesting and significant views of, his descriptions of some of the places there, including the capital, Lhasa. As late as 7 decades after Tibet was annexed by China. I myself have had the opportunity of interacting with Tibetans in, there are at least 12 places in India where there are Tibetan settlements or clusters. Beginning from the north, Bondila in Arunachal, from the northeast, Bondila, Arunachal, Darjeeling, Dharamshala, McLeodganj, then Dehradun. Dehradun has a couple of them, Dehradun and Clementown, Gangtok, Kalimpong, Kulu, Pathankot, Dalhousie, Majnu Ka Tilla in Delhi, and Bailakuppe in west of Mysore district, Karnataka, which is the largest of the Tibetan settlements in India. I have had the opportunity to visit and interact with the settlements in Majnu Ka Tilla, Delhi, Dehradun, Pathankot, Dalhousie, and Dharamsala. And I've had the opportunity of interacting with some of the veterans who fought the Chinese before 1950. It goes without, there's no doubt about all the kinds of massacres and all kinds of harassment of Tibetans, and not to mention exploitation. Maj Gen Mrinal Suman, who's traveled, will give us some very good descriptions of some of the places he visited. Gen Suman sir.
Yes, please. I had the privilege, as you said, being a Fauji, we all served on the, and I agree with you, it should be called Indo-Tibet border and not Indo-China border, Anil. Because we, in our heart of heart, whatever be the government stand, we recognize Tibet to be an independent country, which has been annexed by China illegally. So whenever I served on the border and looked across the line of control and looked at the Tibetan plateau, I always wondered what the life would be of the Tibetans as an enslaved community. I possibly couldn't have gone there while in service, but after retirement, I got 2 opportunities. First one was, which came our way, was like it was a pilgrimage to Kailash Parvat and Mansarovar Lake, and that we had done through Nepal. We went to Kathmandu. From there, we flew to Nepalganj, then Simikot, and by a helicopter to Hilsa. There, on foot, we crossed over to Taklakot in Tibet. It was a shorter visit, about 6-7 days. But the second visit was much longer, and it was started with a train journey from Beijing to Lhasa, which is in central Tibet. And subsequently, we carried out road visits from Lhasa to Shigatse in the west and Ningchi in the southeast. So we really covered the complete Tibetan plateau as such, from west to southeast. And from Ningchi, we flew out to Chengdu. If you ask me, Anil, about my overall impression of the ground situation in Tibet, the story of Tibet is a saga over apathy and indifference to the cultural genocide of Tibetan Buddhism. Sadly, brutal decimation of an ancient, rich, and peace loving culture by ruthless China has been totally ignored by the world without any pangs of consciousness. They have forgotten about the Tibetan human rights and nobody talks about it. Today, Tibet presents a sight of a state under foreign siege. A deceptive calm hides the underlying tension. But there is no cheer in the air. You hardly hear a laughter. You hardly see smiling faces. The Chinese flag flying over Potala Palace is a constant reminder to all the residents of Lhasa that China is the ruler. Very sad. I felt very hurt. I felt very sad. Sorry for the Tibetans to see their temporal seat of the Dalai Lama having to have a flag of Chinese domination flying over it. There are army camps with the dormitory blocks and troops barracks visible across the whole of Tibet. These are surrounded by high protective walls and barricades. And true to the apprehension of an occupation army, locals are not allowed anywhere these camps. You can't even take their photograph. For that matter, you are told by your guide, the local guide, says you cannot take photograph of a Tibetan policeman with weapon, Tibetan army person, or Tibetan military convoy, or Tibetan police post. Tibet, in fact, is in true sense of the word a police state. It is dotted with police stations, manned mostly by Hans from China. Anil, we all, as students of Chinese history, know that a strong China has always been an expansionist China. Coercion and intimidation are well tried out instruments of China's state policy. China has never lived in peace with its neighbors. Even today, it's not doing that, whether it's South China Sea or with India. As you said, in 1950, Tibet was annexed by China. It has been amalgamated as a part of China, and it is called Tibet Autonomous Region, TAR. Well, it's autonomous only in name, because the total control is in Chinese hands. The locals have no say whatsoever. It has an ethnic Tibetan as the chairman, but he's just a figurehead, namesake leader of the area. And he's subordinate to the branch secretary of the Communist Party of China. And he is the real power wielder. And nothing moves in Tibet without his concurrence or without his orders. The local head, who's a Tibetan, is just a lackey, and then he follows the diktats of the Chinese power wielders. And you also talked about the ruthlessness of the Chinese when they occupied and the damage they did to the local culture. It is estimated that more than 1 million, thus 10 lakh Tibetan natives have been killed by the Chinese so far to suppress their urge for freedom, their demand for freedom. And as the Tibetans are highly religious by nature, the Chinese have understood the importance of their places of worship. And they know that unless they target their monasteries, they will not be able to damage their spirit. So they have been, in a systematic manner, they have been destroying and ransacking them. Over 6,000 big and small monasteries have been ransacked so far. They've been burnt. Damage done to Tibet's relics, heritage, architecture has been truly horrendous and is beyond redemption. On ground, when you talk about with the people, you find that there's a minimal interaction between the Chinese and the natives. It is like what used to be during the heydays of the Raj in India, that there was a population which was from the ruling elite, the white people, and they were the natives, the slaves. The Chinese behave like the masters and treat the natives with disdain. They walk around like that. The Hans from the mainland China, they occupy all senior government posts and running prosperous businesses. They are enjoying a much higher standard of living, and they strut around like rulers, demonstrating all the trappings of an occupation force. There's no doubt when you see a person walking from a distance from his gate, you can make it out whether he's a Chinese or he's a humble Tibetan. On the other hand, the Tibetans are treated with suspicion and have been condemned to menial jobs. Their condition is worse than that of the slaves of the olden days. You feel very sorry for them when you see that all janitors, all sweepers, load carriers, laborers are Tibetans. Some of them manage public toilets to make a living. Many peddle in local stones and other local produce. And it's heartbreaking to see a once proud community degraded to the status of bonded labor. Poverty continues to afflict most of them. Along with treating the local Tibetans with disdain, they're also trying to make sure that the Tibet gets integrated into the mainland China through demographic offensive and obliteration of Tibetan identity. They have been bringing in Hans, the immigrants from the mainland China, to come and settle down in Lhasa and other major cities. Urban areas already have nearly 50-50 population of the immigrants and the local Tibetans. However, in the rural areas where the occupation is generally agriculture or where there are nomadic people staying, the Tibetans continue to be in majority. But Anil, what strikes one most is the transformation that the Tibet is undergoing as far as the infrastructure is concerned. You got to give credit to China for what it has been able to achieve. At the time of 1950, when they came into Tibet, there was not a single major proper highway. First, they constructed one highway across Exai chain. Today, there are 3 additional highways which are linking mainland China with Tibet. Kungi Tibet Railway is a high elevation railway, it's an engineering marvel. It runs across Kunlun Mountains, nearly 2,000 kilometer long railway line with 550 kilometers of the track laid on permafrost. No one ever imagined then the trains can run across the Kunlun Mountains. But the Chinese have been able to achieve it. And not only that, when we traveled in that train, we were surprised that along with what we have with every berth night light, they also have an oxygen switch. That if you're feeling uncomfortable, you press the switch and a couple of puffs of oxygen are pumped out to the people who are sitting in that bogie. It's amazing. Credit to them for that. Lhasa, after having connected Lhasa with the mainland China by train, they constructed a road towards the west to Shigatse, which is a 240-kilometer long road. Then they have connected it to the southeast to Ningchi as well, which is another 435-kilometer railway. And it has said, can you believe it, a design speed of 160 kilometers per hour in that sort of terrain? It's amazing. And they are also now planning, when we went there, there were plans afoot to extend it, the railway line from Shigatse to Zangmu on Nepal border, as also to Yadong, which is closer to Tibet-India border. But the as it happens, whenever you carry out lots and lots of infrastructure development projects, and the first casualty is the green space. Lhasa, which had 22 large parks, has only 3 large parks today. The rest of them have all been taken over by concrete jungle. To change the demography of Tibet, as I said, they have been bringing in large number of migrants from the mainland, and these migrants have to be housed, and for them, they have been constructing sprawls of unsightly buildings, rows of uninspiring residential blocks, the typical what we see at times in the communist countries. Arcades and shopping malls are also coming up, but most of them are owned by the uh, migrants, that is the Hans from the mainland China. What is surprising, or what can we, where I give credit to China for having carried out so much of infrastructure, I also marvel at the spirit of the Tibetans. To date, even after, say, 74 years, yes, 1950 to 24, 74
Yes,
years,
yes.
74 years of rule, they have not been able to crush the ethnic pride of the Tibetans. They have been systematically annihilating Tibetan culture and religion, but have not been able to, let's say, extinguish it as such. In recent past, there was demolitions carried out at Larung Gar Buddhist Academy, which is considered the largest Tibetan Buddhist institute, both from academy as well as the monastery, and in the world, and is supposed to be keeping the Buddhist knowledge alive. Under the garb of decongesting, they started demolishing large number of his buildings and thereby destroying his, let's say,
They,
the
uh,
assets.
if I may just add, sir, they have a, a kind of, you mentioned Tibet, you mentioned that Dalai Lama. They go bonkers. It's they they still, after, even as you say, after 74 years, they still cannot. They haven't been able to beat the spirit, the Tibetan spirit, and they are very very um, you know it's like a red rag.
Correct.
Talking about any
Absolutely.
praise of Tibetan, or of the of Dalai Lama is like a red rag to the Chinese
Very good.
communists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Then I was telling you, after, along with that, there's a Jata Gone nunnery, which is also has been demolished. Can you believe it that the Buddhists, even today, need police clearance to congregate to celebrate their festivals? Every gathering of the monks is overseen by armed troops, lest they conspire against China. That is the sense of insecurity the Chinese suffer to date. If a group of monks want to visit another monastery, they have to file an application spelling out the purpose and duration and how many people would be attending it. Then the local police station of the both the places from where they are going and where they are going, the destination, are to be had informed, and armed policeman is detailed to escort the group. Even our tourist bus was accompanied by a policeman all through our stay in Tibet. And after doing a small round of an area, it would go back to a police station, give a report, and obtain security clearance to proceed further. And the Chinese are so scared of the Tibetans interacting with others, lest they reveal the true state of affairs, that the Tibetans are not issued passports. They can only get the permits to visit the Chinese mainland. They can never get passports. We, in a hotel where there was a young boy, maybe around 2022, perhaps he was born after Dalai Lama had left Tibet. He has never seen him. He's only perhaps heard the stories from his parents. So one day, while serving us in a very hushed tone, he says, "Are you from India?" I say, "Yes." "Our Holiness there?" We said, "Yes, with us." "How's he?" So we said, "He's fine, keeping well. He's getting 80. So obviously he's in good health, good cheer, and we are looking after it." Sir, can I visit him and meet him and bow before him? I say, yes, if you come there, everyone does it. He is available to the all the Buddhists in Dharamshala. He says, sir, I want my only wish in my life is to go up prostrate before him. But I know I will never be able to do that because I will never get the passport. They will never let me go. From here, I can only go to mainland China and come back. And when we were moving around, the Chinese, the policemen and the military person of whomsoever we came across, they also make it very obvious that you are not welcome. I mean, at times their looks tell you, who the hell has called you here? Why have you come here? They are quite happy if there are no visitors, no tourists. And the Han population, as I told you, has already overwhelmed. And now a stage has come that in all their schools and colleges, Mandarin has become compulsory and not the local Tibetan language, which seems to be dying. Because now even the big those banners and the road signs, everything is in Mandarin. But as I said, that we were very impressed with the spirit of the Chinese, I'm so sorry, with the Tibetans that they have, because the Chinese have not been able to crush it, despite grave atrocities. And you said very rightly that these people are very worried. They are very scared of Dalai Lama. I mean, you cannot, in Tibet, you cannot utter the word Dalai Lama. If you say His Holiness, you are bound to land up in jail. That is worst offense that can be there. So Dalai Lama or His Holiness are never heard or spoken in Tibet because the Chinese are very worried about them. And that's why Chinese have banned Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, and all such social media. You'd be surprised, Anil, at Taklakot when we were crossing by road, when we were going to Mansarovar Lake, the moment we crossed into China, and sat in Chinese buses. We went about maybe 5 kilometers. The buses were stopped at a place where the road was slightly wide, and we were asked to take our complete luggage down, our handbags, our bedding, everything that you had with you. So we had to lay it out on the ground on the tarmac. So the policeman came. They started checking each and every item. They did not want any individual to carry any printed material which will maybe even remotely connected with the Dalai Lama. I mean, they're those so scared. I mean, it is laughable, but they took our cameras and cell phones, went through the complete galleries to find out are we carrying any photographs of the Dalai Lama? I mean, that is the level to which they are afraid of the Dalai Lama. But they want to remind the people that we are the rulers, so that when you go, every house in Tibet is mandated to fly the Chinese flag on the top. They can have the Tibetan flag, but the height of the Chinese flag has to be more than the Tibetan flag, the Tibetan prayer flag, because they say the Chinese flag is supreme and it must appear to be supreme. And non-compliance is considered as an act of defiance. Foreign visitor at every place are tailed by the police. They want to find out whom are they meeting, what are they talking. They will try to eavesdrop. When we went to the local market in Lhasa and we were trying to buy some local saffron which the people were selling, we could make out there was a man standing right next to us who was pretending that as if he's also one of the buyers, but he was trying to overhear what we were talking. They are worried that the locals may not let out a few things which they don't want us to hear. That is the level of fear that they have about Dalai Lama, and he's becoming a symbol of Tibet's struggle for independence. No, I tell you that as far as the Dalai Lama is concerned, I have sort of feel very strongly that it is time that certain steps are taken. Make sure that Dalai Lama's power, his influence, and his, let's say, respect over the people that he commands, over the people of Tibet, is not reduced or made or let the Chinese reduce it. He is the only symbol of Tibet's struggle for independence as far as the international arena is concerned. And China considers him to be the biggest impediment in the integration of Tibet in mainland China. And they know that till the time the Dalai Lama's sway is not reduced or he is not replaced by a pro-China boy as the next Dalai Lama, they will never be able to get full control of the Tibetans' minds. Dalai Lama, even today, it's amazing that as I told you, that when we saw the Chinese flag flying over the Potala Palace, we felt hurt. It pained us somewhere. That the Indians are not used to seeing the temples or the religious places bearing the flags of the rulers or the ruling countries. But that was so. So the flag flies very high over the Potala Palace. Yet the people, we saw hundreds of the devotees covering long distance, and they were lying prostrate at every step. They were lying prostrate, marking out the place, getting up, again lying prostrate because they wanted to measure the distance up to the Potala Palace, up to the seat of their Dalai Lama by with their body length. Their faith defies description. Norbulinka is the summer palace of Dalai Lama. The Chinese have recently opened it. Earlier it was closed, nobody could go there, but now it has opened it more as a tourist spot than anything else. There are no photographs of Dalai Lama or any of his relics. Yet the people go there. There is a lamp, the butter lamp, which is burning. People go there. I've seen the local Tibetans in tattered clothes, poor, impoverished people going there, carrying homemade butter to keep the lamps lit. And they would offer whatever torn or those tattered notes that they have, the local currency, as their donation, because they are waiting that their spiritual head will return one day to free Tibet. Now we have to, here the government has to step in and take a lesson from what the Chinese did with Panchen Lama. As we know, the Panchen Lama is the second most important religious dignitary in Tibet. He's next only to Dalai Lama. And it's a very strange system where the Dalai Lamas, when he is selected, the Panchen Lama plays a key role, and when the Panchen Lama is selected, Dalai Lama plays a key role. Yeah. After the escape of the current Dalai Lama in 59, Panchen Lama Gyaltsen, he sided with the Chinese. He thought that by siding with the Chinese, he may be able to save their culture by humoring them, by being reasonable with them, being reasoning it out with them, and may be able to sort of help the local Tibetan population as well. But soon he became disillusioned. And in 5 years' time, that is in 64, he was imprisoned and kept under house arrest. Thereafter, he was brought to Shigatse in 89, and he was only 51-year-old when he died. Locals are convinced that he was poisoned because he had started taking anti-China stand. The moment he died, the Chinese, the Dalai Lama chose a local boy called Naima, Gedun Naima, as the next Panchen Lama. But the boy went missing soon after his nomination, and to date he is untraced. No one knows where that boy has gone and where his even family has gone. People say that he is somewhere, and in his place, the Chinese government conspired to select a boy called Norbu. He was the son of 2 Communist Party members as the 11th Panchen Lama. Today, he is a Panchen Lama, but the locals do not recognize him. They call him as a stooge of the Chinese. And Panchen Lama's official residence is in Shigatse. Like the Dalai Lama stays in the Potala Palace, he stays in Shigatse Monastery. But this Norbu, the present Panchen Lama, doesn't have the courage to come and stay in Shigatse because they fear that he will be killed. When he comes to Shigatse on a visit, the city is converted into a police fortress. And locals are forced and even paid money to send 2 persons per family to attend his addresses. This is China. So this is what, just 1 second, Aniruddha, this is what I come to the point, what you said. If Tibet is China's Achilles heel, the Dalai Lama is a lethal dagger in the Chinese heart.
Yes. Sir, when in my book, China Bloodies Bulletless Borders, I have some photographs of the Dalai Lama's entry into India and his being escorted by personnel of 5 Assam Rifles. And in 1967, when we had skirmishes in Nathula and Chola, Sikkim, they lost almost 400 personnel. And after that, they pressed very hard that we should not fire at each other. And that continues. Even what happened in Galwan in 2020, they, we didn't, they used these, horrid medieval, barbaric weapons, iron rods with nails on them. We didn't fire back at them. We eventually killed many more than the 20 of 14 SAM rifles, 14 Bihar, which they killed. Many more, but with their bare hands. But in 1975, they captured in October 1975, they captured 5 personnel of 5 Assam Rifles and they killed them by torture because the 5 Assam Rifles represented the battalion which escorted him, which gave him a guard of honor. So I mean that's the kind of attitude there. But I must thank you, sir, for a very, very great expose of what things are like in Tibet. After all, in this Iron Curtain in China, there's very little that that comes out. And thank you very much, sir, for giving us this description.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.